My name is India Wilson, and at 35 years old, I never expected to be the CEO of a multi-million-dollar marketing agency. 13 years ago, I was abandoned in the Colorado wilderness by my vindictive boss, Karen, during a corporate retreat. Her parting words still echo in my mind. Consider this your exit interview. Little did she know that her cruelty would become the foundation of my success. The sweet taste of karma came years later, when her daughter walked into my office for a job interview. Before I tell you how karma came full circle, let me know where you are watching from and subscribe to hear more stories of workplace justice that will leave you speechless. I grew up in a small town in Ohio, the daughter of a high school teacher and a nurse. We were comfortable but never wealthy. From a young age, I was fascinated by advertisements. While other kids would fast forward through commercials, I would analyze them, dissecting their messaging and impact. This natural interest led me to pursue a degree in marketing at Ohio State University. I graduated in 2009, right in the middle of the recession. Finding a job was brutal. I sent out hundreds of applications, attended dozens of interviews, and faced rejection after rejection. My student loans were piling up, and I was working as a barista just to make ends meet. Every night I would come home to my tiny apartment exhausted from standing all day and still spend hours applying for marketing positions. 6 months after graduation, when I was close to giving up on my dreams, I finally got a call back from Lambert Marketing Solutions, a mid-sized agency in New York City. They were looking for an entry-level marketing assistant, and my portfolio had caught their attention. The salary was modest, but it was a foot in the door. I packed everything I owned into my beat-up Honda Civic and drove to New York, sleeping on my college friend's couch until I could afford my own place. My first day at Lambert was intimidating. The office was sleek and modern, filled with well-dressed professionals who exuded confidence. I felt out of place in my bargain store blazer and scuffed shoes. During orientation, the human resources manager, James Patterson, a kind man in his 40s with salt and pepper hair and warm eyes, introduced me to the team. And this, James said, as we approached a corner office, is Karen Hamilton, our marketing director. You will be reporting directly to her. Karen looked up from her computer, her sharp blue eyes assessing me from head to toe. She was in her early 40s, impeccably dressed in a designer suit, her blonde hair cut in a severe bob. She did not smile. "So you are the new assistant," she said, her voice clipped. "I expect excellence, punctuality, and initiative. Mediocrity is not tolerated in my department. Clear?" "Yes, absolutely," I nodded eagerly, determined to impress her. That first month was a trial by fire. Karen was demanding to the point of being ruthless. She would send emails at midnight expecting responses by 6 a.m. She criticized everything from my presentation skills to the way I organized spreadsheets. Nothing was ever good enough. I quickly learned that Karen played favorites in the office. Rebecca, the account supervisor, and Michael, the creative director, were her inner circle. They would have lunch together daily, sharing inside jokes and making decisions that affected the rest of us without any input. Despite the toxic environment, I was determined to succeed. I stayed late every night, volunteered for the most challenging projects, and studied industry trends in my spare time. Slowly, I began to master the role, even earning occasional nods of approval from Karen when my work exceeded expectations. I found an ally in Angela Chen, another marketing associate who had been at Lambert for 2 years. Angela was brilliant, creative, and kind. She took me under her wing, showing me shortcuts in our software systems and warning me about office politics. "Be careful around Karen," Angela warned one day as we grabbed coffee. "She sees promising young women as threats, not talent to nurture." The last assistant who outshined her found herself reassigned to our dying print division. I appreciated the warning, but believed I could prove my value. "I just need to show her I can make her look good," I insisted. 6 months into the job, an opportunity arose. One of our biggest clients, NutriFit, a rising fitness supplement company, was unsatisfied with their current campaign. The account was at risk, and Karen was under pressure from the CEO to fix it. During a brainstorming session, where everyone seemed out of ideas, I gathered my courage and presented a comprehensive rebrand strategy I had been working on in my free time. The room fell silent as I walked them through my vision for repositioning NutriFit as not just another supplement company, but as a lifestyle brand focused on holistic wellness. To my surprise, Karen nodded approvingly. Not bad, India. Work with Michael to refine this and have something on my desk by tomorrow. I stayed until midnight working with Michael, who actually incorporated many of my ideas into the final presentation. I felt a surge of pride knowing my concept might save the account. The next week, Karen presented my strategy to NutriFit executives. They loved it. The account was secured with an increased budget. I expected acknowledgement, perhaps even a small bonus. Instead, at the company announcement of the successful pitch, Karen took full credit. My vision for NutriFit as a lifestyle brand, rather than just a supplement company, resonated with their executive team. She announced to applause, not even glancing in my direction. Angela squeezed my arm sympathetically as we watched Karen bask in praise for my ideas. "Welcome to Lambert," she whispered, "where good ideas are stolen and ladders are climbed on the backs of others." Despite the disappointment, I remained dedicated. I told myself this was just how the industry worked. Pay your dues, learn the business, and eventually you would get your chance to shine. Looking back now, I realize I was naive, but that naivety kept me going through the daily indignities of working under Karen Hamilton. For the next year, I continued to excel in my role, gradually earning the respect of other department heads, if not Karen herself. I was promoted to marketing associate, a small step up but significant in the hierarchy. Still, Karen continued to take credit for my best ideas, while blaming me for any campaigns that underperformed. I was surviving, not thriving, but I believed my time would come. Then came the announcement that would change everything: the annual corporate retreat. The announcement came on a Friday afternoon in late September. The entire office was gathered in the conference room for the monthly status update when our CEO, Robert Lambert, mentioned the annual executive retreat. "As you all know, our leadership team will be heading to Aspen for our strategic planning session next month," Robert said, his voice carrying authority across the room. 3 days of intensive planning, team building, and of course some well-deserved relaxation at the Silver Pine Resort. The executive retreat was legendary at Lambert Marketing. Only director-level employees and above were typically invited, along with a few rising stars, handpicked by the CEO. It was where major company decisions were made, along with promotions and restructuring plans. As Robert continued discussing quarterly results, Karen approached me after the meeting with an unexpected proposition. "India, I need someone to manage logistics and take notes during the strategic sessions," she said, examining her manicured nails. "Rebecca was supposed to attend, but she has a family emergency. You will fill in." I was stunned. This was an unprecedented opportunity for someone at my level. Angela's eyes widened from across the room, and I could feel other colleagues staring in surprise. "Thank you for the opportunity," I said, trying to contain my excitement. "I won't let you down." Karen's smile did not reach her eyes. "See that you do not. We leave on October 15th. I will email you the details." As soon as Karen walked away, Angela rushed over, pulling me into an empty meeting room. "Be careful," she whispered urgently. "This is not normal. Karen never does anything without an ulterior motive." "Maybe she finally recognized my potential," I suggested, hopefully. Angela shook her head. "Or maybe she needs someone to blame if something goes wrong. Just watch your back. Karen, Rebecca, and Michael have been whispering all week, and they stop whenever anyone approaches." Despite Angela's warnings, I was thrilled. This could be my chance to impress the executives, to show them what I could do outside of Karen's shadow. I spent the next 2 weeks preparing meticulously. I researched every current client, read all the quarterly reports, and even bought a new professional wardrobe I could barely afford. The morning of our departure arrived, and I met the executive team at LaGuardia Airport. There were 12 of us in total, the CEO, 5 department directors including Karen, 3 vice presidents, Michael, myself, and Stephanie from legal. The flight to Aspen was awkward. I was clearly the most junior person there, and most of the executives clustered together discussing golf and vacation homes. Karen ignored me, entirely engrossed in conversation with Michael and our CEO. When we arrived at Silver Pine Resort, I was awestruck. The luxury mountain lodge was nestled among aspen trees, with breathtaking views of the snow-capped mountains. The lobby featured soaring ceilings, with exposed wooden beams, stone fireplaces, and plush leather furniture. "Impressive, is it not?" a voice beside me commented. It was Jeffrey Morgan, the finance director, a man in his 50s with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "First time in Aspen?" "First time west of Chicago, actually," I admitted. He chuckled. "Well, enjoy it. The company spares no expense for these retreats." My room was more luxurious than any hotel I had ever stayed in, with a king-sized bed, gas fireplace, and balcony overlooking the mountains. But I had little time to enjoy it. Within an hour, we were called to the first strategy session. The initial meetings went well. I took detailed notes and even contributed a few insights when asked directly by Robert. I could feel Karen's eyes on me whenever I spoke, her expression unreadable. That evening, there was a welcome dinner in a private dining room. The conversation flowed along with expensive wine, but I noticed Karen, Rebecca, and Michael huddled at the end of the table, occasionally glancing my way and speaking in hushed tones. During dinner, I excused myself to use the restroom. As I was returning, I overheard Karen's voice from around the corner. "I had to bring someone, and better her than that ambitious Angela," Karen was saying. "India is naive enough to manage without asking too many questions. Once the restructuring is announced, her position will be redundant anyway." "Are you sure bringing her was wise?" Michael asked. "She is more observant than you give her credit for." "Please," Karen scoffed. "She is so grateful for the opportunity she would jump off a cliff if I told her it would advance her career." I froze, my heart racing. I quickly retreated and took another route back to the dining room, my mind spinning. Restructuring, my position becoming redundant. Was I brought here just to be fired afterward? The next day featured team-building activities in the morning and strategy sessions in the afternoon. During a presentation on digital marketing trends, I shared insights about emerging social media platforms that caught the CEO's attention. "Excellent analysis, India," Robert commented. "Karen, you have found a real talent here." Karen's smile was tight. "India has potential, though she still has much to learn about strategic implementation." That afternoon, while everyone was reviewing quarterly reports, I managed to glimpse a document on Karen's tablet labeled Department Restructuring Proposal. Before I could see details, Karen snapped the cover closed, glaring at me suspiciously. The tension continued to build during dinner. Karen barely acknowledged me while Michael and Rebecca were overly solicitous, asking about my background and career goals with strange smiles that never reached their eyes. Later that night, I confided in Stephanie from the legal department, the only other woman close to my age on the trip. "Something feels off about this whole thing," I told her as we shared a drink at the hotel bar after everyone else had retired. "I think Karen might be planning to eliminate my position." Stephanie sighed. "Listen, I probably shouldn't tell you this, but there is a major reorganization coming. Several positions in marketing are being consolidated. I have seen the paperwork." "Is my job at risk?" I asked directly. She hesitated. "I cannot share specifics, but if I were you, I would update my resume." I barely slept that night. By the final day of the retreat, I was a bundle of nerves but determined to maintain my professionalism. The last activity on our agenda was a group hike on Aspen Mountain, followed by a farewell lunch before our flight back to New York. Little did I know that this hike would change the course of my life forever. The final day of the retreat dawned crisp and clear. Through my hotel room window, I could see the morning sun illuminating the mountains, painting them gold and amber. Despite my anxiety about the future of my position, I could not help but appreciate the beauty surrounding us. We gathered in the lobby at 9 o'clock, dressed in hiking gear provided by the resort. Robert addressed the group with enthusiasm. "Today's hike will take us up Aspen Mountain along the Silver Trail. It is a moderate 5-mile loop with spectacular views. The resort has provided maps, water bottles, and trail snacks. We will break into smaller groups to make the hike more manageable. As Robert divided us into groups, Karen quickly maneuvered to ensure I was placed with her, Rebecca, and Michael. My stomach tightened with apprehension, but I forced a smile, determined to remain professional. India will come with us, Karen announced, linking arms with Rebecca. We will take the eastern route and meet the rest of you at Summit Point for lunch. We set off along the trail, the early portion of the hike passing without incident. The autumn foliage was stunning, with aspen trees shimmering in vibrant yellows and oranges against the evergreen backdrop. Under different circumstances, I would have enjoyed every moment. About 2 miles in, our small group had pulled considerably ahead of the others. Karen set a brisk pace, and I struggled to keep up while admiring the increasingly spectacular views. The trail narrowed as we climbed higher, with a steep drop-off to our right. "So, India," Karen began, her tone deceptively casual. "What are your thoughts on the restructuring discussion from yesterday's session?" I chose my words carefully. I think adapting to market changes is essential for any company's survival. Michael laughed. Diplomatic answer. "But surely you must have opinions about how it might affect your position." Before I could respond, my foot caught on an exposed root. I stumbled, my ankle twisting painfully beneath me. I cried out, dropping to one knee on the narrow trail. "Are you all right?" Rebecca asked, not making any move to help me up. "I think I twisted my ankle." I winced, attempting to stand. A sharp pain shot up my leg, causing me to gasp. "I might need a minute." Karen sighed dramatically. "We are already behind schedule. The others will be waiting." I tested my weight on the injured ankle. It hurt, but I could bear it. "I can continue, but maybe at a slower pace." "That will not work for us," Karen said, coldly exchanging glances with Rebecca and Michael. "We need to reach the summit by noon." "You three, go ahead," I suggested, masking my discomfort. "I will follow slowly and catch up." Karen considered me for a moment, then smiled. It was not a kind smile. She reached into her backpack and handed Michael something I couldn't see. They whispered among themselves while I struggled to my feet, using a tree for support. "Here is what we will do," Karen announced. "We will continue to the summit. You clearly cannot keep up with your injury." "I can manage," I insisted, though the throbbing in my ankle was intensifying. No, Karen said with exaggerated concern. "You should head back to the lodge. The trail loops around. Just follow it downhill." Rebecca chimed in. "It is a simple route. Even you cannot get lost." Something about their expressions made my blood run cold. I realized with sudden clarity that this was their plan all along. Get me alone, away from the others. "I would feel safer if someone went with me," I said, trying to keep the desperation from my voice. "Or if we just waited for the other group." "We cannot miss the strategy discussion at lunch," Michael stated firmly. "Company priorities, you understand." Karen reached into her backpack again and pulled out what appeared to be the trail map. She studied it for a moment, then folded it and tucked it into her pocket rather than giving it to me. "The trail is clearly marked," she said dismissively. "Just keep going downhill." As they prepared to continue upward, Karen turned back to me with a smirk. "Oh, and India. Consider this, your exit interview. Your services will no longer be required at Lambert Marketing." Rebecca snickered. "Nothing personal, just business." "You cannot be serious," I stammered, shocked at the blatant cruelty. "You are leaving me injured on a mountain?" "Do not be so dramatic," Karen rolled her eyes. "It is a public trail. Someone will come along eventually." With that, the three of them continued up the path without looking back. Michael turned once, an expression almost like guilt crossing his face before Karen called him forward. I stood there in disbelief, watching them disappear around a bend. The realization of my situation slowly sank in. I was alone, injured without a map in wilderness I was completely unfamiliar with. My phone showed only 1 bar of service, and the battery was at 30%. I tried calling the resort, but the call wouldn't connect. I sent a text to Stephanie explaining my situation, but it showed as undelivered. Panic began to rise in my chest, but I forced myself to breathe deeply. Panicking would not help me get off this mountain. Looking around, I tried to get my bearings. The trail indeed forked, but neither direction was clearly downhill from my vantage point. I had been so busy talking and then dealing with my injury that I hadn't paid close attention to our route. I chose the path that seemed to lead back toward the resort and began limping along it. Each step sent shooting pain through my ankle, but I pushed forward using a broken branch as a makeshift walking stick. An hour passed, and the trail did not look familiar. The pain in my ankle had worsened, and dark clouds were gathering overhead. The temperature was dropping rapidly as afternoon gave way to evening. I tried my phone again, but the battery was now at 15% with still no reliable signal. I realized with growing horror that I was not on the main trail anymore. The path had become overgrown with fewer trail markers. I was lost. As dusk approached, a light rain began to fall quickly, soaking through my light jacket. I had no raincoat, no food beyond a single granola bar, and less than half a bottle of water left. The gravity of my situation became painfully clear. If I didn't find shelter soon, I would be facing a night on the mountain in deteriorating weather with inadequate supplies. Using the last of my phone battery, I turned on the flashlight function and found a small rock overhang that offered minimal protection from the elements. I gathered pine boughs to create a crude barrier against the wind and huddled beneath my makeshift shelter as darkness fell completely. The night was the longest of my life. The temperature dropped to near freezing, and my wet clothes did little to retain body heat. I shivered uncontrollably, drifting in and out of restless sleep, jerking awake at every sound in the darkness. Pain, fear, and disbelief cycled through my mind. How could anyone be cruel enough to abandon an injured colleague in the wilderness? What had I done to deserve such treatment? By morning, I was exhausted, hungry, and showing early signs of hypothermia. My ankle had swollen to twice its normal size, and I could barely put weight on it. I forced myself to keep moving, knowing that staying in one place was more dangerous than trying to find help. Around mid-morning, I heard the most beautiful sound voices calling my name. Park rangers had been alerted when I failed to return to the resort. Apparently, Stephanie had raised the alarm when neither I nor Karen's group appeared for the farewell lunch. "Ma'am, are you India Wilson?" called a ranger as they approached with a rescue dog leading the way. I nearly collapsed with relief. Yes, I am here. They quickly assessed my condition, wrapped me in emergency blankets, and radioed for assistance. As they splinted my ankle and prepared me for evacuation, I learned the devastating truth. Karen, Rebecca, and Michael had returned to the resort, claiming I had decided to take a different trail despite their warnings. They had boarded the flight back to New York, with the rest of the executive team leaving me behind without a second thought. They said what I asked incredulously, as the female ranger Sarah helped me sip from a thermos of hot tea. They told the resort manager, "You were an inexperienced hiker who insisted on exploring on your own," Sarah explained gently. "They claimed they tried to talk you out of it." The betrayal cut deeper than the physical pain of my injury. Not only had they abandoned me, but they had also preemptively crafted a narrative that painted me as reckless and insubordinate. As I was carried down the mountain on a stretcher, I felt a mixture of relief at being rescued and dread about what awaited me back in New York. Karen had made her intentions clear on that mountain trail. My career at Lambert Marketing was over. What I didn't yet realize was that my entire professional life was about to crumble around me. The local hospital in Aspen diagnosed me with a grade 2 ankle sprain, mild hypothermia, and dehydration. I spent one night under observation before being discharged with crutches, pain medication, and strict instructions to rest. My company credit card had already been deactivated. I had to use my personal credit card already near its limit to pay for medical expenses not covered by insurance and to book a commercial flight back to New York. I called James from HR repeatedly, but my calls went straight to voicemail. The 4-hour flight was a blur of physical discomfort and emotional turmoil. I alternated between rage at Karen's cruelty, anxiety about my future, and disbelief that this was really happening. By the time the plane touched down at LaGuardia, I had resolved to fight for my position. I would go straight to Robert, tell him the truth about what happened, and surely justice would prevail. I took a taxi directly to Lambert Marketing's offices, my ankle throbbing despite the pain medication. The security guard in the lobby looked surprised to see me hobbling in on crutches. "Miss Wilson, I thought you were no longer with the company," he said, checking his computer. "What are you talking about? I just got back from the corporate retreat," I replied, a sinking feeling in my stomach. "I have orders here to revoke your building access," he said apologetically. "You will need to speak with human resources." After several phone calls and considerable persuasion, James finally came down to the lobby. His usually warm face was troubled, his manner distant. "India, I am sorry, but your employment with Lambert Marketing has been terminated," he said, quietly avoiding my eyes. "On what grounds?" I demanded, my voice echoing in the marble lobby. "Abandonment of position," James replied mechanically. "Karen filed a formal complaint stating you abandoned the group during a mandatory company event displaying unprofessional and potentially dangerous behavior." "She left me injured on a mountain," I exclaimed, gesturing to my crutches. "I nearly died of exposure. There are medical reports, ranger statements." James shifted uncomfortably. "Karen, Rebecca, and Michael all provided consistent accounts of what happened. They claim you insisted on taking an unauthorized trail despite their warnings. They are lying. Call Stephanie from legal. She knows something was wrong when I didn't return." "Stephanie has corroborated that you expressed dissatisfaction with the company during the retreat and mentioned wanting to go your own way," James said, not meeting my gaze. "Look, this decision comes from above me. Your personal belongings have been packed and are waiting with security." I stood there in shock, tears of frustration welling in my eyes. "So that is it. 3 years of dedicated work, and you take their word over mine without any investigation." James finally looked at me, a flicker of regret in his eyes. "For what it is worth, I do not believe their version entirely. But Karen has the CEO's ear, and the decision has been made. I truly am sorry." I was handed a small box containing the meager contents of my desk, a few photos, a plant, some office supplies. My computer had already been wiped, my email access revoked, 3 years of my professional life erased in my absence. Outside on the sidewalk, I called Angela, who rushed to meet me at a coffee shop near the office. "This is insane," she fumed, after I recounted the full story. "Karen has always been cruel, but this is criminal. You could have died out there." "I know, but it is my word against 3 executives," I said, the reality of my situation sinking in. "I have no proof they abandoned me intentionally." "We should go to the media," Angela suggested fiercely. "Expose them." "And be labeled a disgruntled employee making wild accusations that would only make it harder to find another job." I sighed, running my hands through my hair. "I need to be strategic about this." Over the next few weeks, I tried to rebuild. I applied to every marketing agency in New York, but soon discovered a disturbing pattern. Initial interviews would go well, but follow-up calls never came. After one particularly promising interview, a sympathetic HR person called me off the record. "I shouldn't be telling you this," she said in a hushed tone, "but you're being blackballed. Karen Hamilton called our creative director personally to warn us against hiring you. She described you as unstable and unprofessional." My heart sank. Karen had powerful connections throughout the New York marketing world. Her whisper campaign was devastatingly effective. After 2 months of rejections, my savings were nearly depleted. I could barely make rent on my tiny apartment, and the medical bills from Aspen kept arriving. I sold my furniture piece by piece. I took odd jobs through TaskRabbit walking dogs and assembling IKEA furniture for strangers. I applied for positions far below my qualifications, willing to take anything to stay afloat. One night, sitting on my now barren apartment floor eating ramen noodles, I hit rock bottom. My ankle had healed, but my spirit was broken. I seriously considered moving back to Ohio, admitting defeat, and starting over in a different field. Perhaps I could teach like my father. At least it would be stable. I was packing the few belongings I had left when my phone rang. It was an unknown number, and I almost didn't answer, expecting another collection agency. Something made me pick up. "India Wilson speaking," I said flatly. "India. This is Taylor Brooks. We met when I was client director at Nutrifit. I'm not sure if you remember me." I sat up straighter. Taylor had been impressed with my ideas during the Nutrifit rebrand before Karen took credit for everything. "Of course I remember you, Taylor. How are you?" "I left Nutrifit 6 months ago to launch my own startup wellness collective. We're a small digital health platform connecting users with wellness professionals. We're growing faster than expected and desperately need marketing help." A flicker of hope ignited in my chest. What kind of help? Honestly, everything. Brand strategy, content creation, social media management. I remembered your ideas for Nutrifit, how you understood wellness wasn't just about products but lifestyle. I tracked you down to offer you a consulting contract. I almost laughed at the timing. "Taylor, you have no idea how perfect your call is right now." "Great. Can we meet tomorrow to discuss details?" "It's a 3-month contract to start, but if we hit our growth targets, there's potential for more." That night, for the first time in months, I slept without anxiety crushing my chest. It wasn't a full-time job and the pay was modest compared to Lambert, but it was something, a chance. And sometimes that's all you need to begin again. The Wellness Collective operated out of a converted warehouse in Brooklyn, a far cry from the gleaming Manhattan offices of Lambert Marketing. The space was raw with exposed brick walls, mismatched furniture, and the persistent scent of the vegan cafe on the ground floor. But there was an energy there that had been missing at Lambert, a genuine enthusiasm for creating something meaningful. Taylor introduced me to his small team of 4, 2 developers, a content writer, and a user experience designer. "Everyone, this is India Wilson, the marketing genius I have been telling you about," Taylor announced on my first day. "She is going to help us reach the right audience and refine our brand message." I felt a twinge of imposter syndrome as they greeted me warmly. After months of rejection and self-doubt, being valued again felt foreign. "I am just a consultant for now," I clarified, not wanting to presume too much. "Consultant, team member, whatever you want to call it." Taylor waved dismissively. "We need your brain, and we are not big on titles here." Working with the Wellness Collective reminded me why I loved marketing in the first place. Without Karen's toxic oversight, I could implement creative strategies and see immediate results. Taylor gave me freedom to experiment, and because the startup had limited resources, I learned to accomplish more with less. I worked from my apartment most days, having given up my lease for a cheaper sublet in Queens. I transformed my tiny living room into an office with market research pinned to the walls and campaign drafts spread across a card table. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. The initial 3-month contract stretched to 6 as the Wellness Collective gained traction. My social media strategy had quadrupled their user engagement, and a content marketing campaign I developed was featured in several health and wellness blogs. One evening, as Taylor and I reviewed quarterly results over takeout containers in the empty office, he made an unexpected proposal. "I want to bring you on full-time," he said between bites of pad thai. "As our marketing director." I nearly choked on my spring roll. "Really? Can the company afford that right now?" "Barely," he admitted with a laugh. "But we cannot afford not to. Our investor meeting went well last week. We secured another round of funding, and I argued that a portion should go toward building our marketing team, starting with you." It wasn't Lambert marketing salary, but it was stable employment with equity options in a growing company. Most importantly, it was validation. My expertise had value, regardless of Karen's attempts to destroy my reputation. I accepted on the spot. As marketing director for the Wellness Collective, I began to rebuild my professional network, this time on my own terms. I attended industry events, contributed articles to marketing publications, and slowly my name began to circulate for the right reasons. 6 months into my new role, I received a surprising email from Angela. "Need to talk." Coffee tomorrow. Important news about LM. We met at our old spot near Lambert's offices. Angela looked different, more stressed than I remembered, with dark circles under her eyes. Karen is getting worse, she said without preamble. Since you left, she has gone through 4 marketing associates. The department is imploding. Why are you still there? I asked, concerned by her exhausted appearance. I have been asking myself the same question, she sighed. Honestly, fear. You were the brave one, India. I saw what happened to you, and was terrified of ending up the same way. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. It was not bravery. I was forced out. And yet look at you now, she smiled wanly, building something new while we are all still trapped in Karen's toxic kingdom. As our coffee stretched into lunch, Angela revealed more about the deteriorating conditions at Lambert. Karen's management style had become increasingly erratic. The NutriFit account, once the agency's crown jewel, was threatening to leave due to missed deadlines and creative stagnation. The ideas dried up when you left, Angela admitted. Karen keeps trying to recreate your strategies without understanding what made them work. By the end of our lunch, I had offered Angela a position at the Wellness Collective. 2 weeks later, she joined as our content strategy manager, bringing her talent and unexpectedly 3 former Lambert clients who followed her out the door. With Angela on board and client referrals increasing, we quickly outgrew our corner of the Brooklyn warehouse. Taylor and I began searching for larger offices, eventually leasing a modest but modern space in downtown Brooklyn. We hired 2 more marketers, an analyst, and a dedicated social media manager. A year after my lowest point, I was leading a team of 8 talented professionals. The Wellness Collective had evolved into Wellness Network with an expanded business model and over 50,000 active users on the platform. The most unexpected call came 18 months after the Aspen incident. It was James from Lambert Marketing. India, I hope it is okay that I reached out. I got your number from Angela. James, I said, surprised but not displeased. How are you? I have left Lambert, he said, a new lightness in his voice. After what happened with you and seeing the pattern continue with others, I couldn't be part of it anymore. I am sorry it came to that, but good for you for making a change. Actually, that is why I am calling. I am exploring new opportunities, and I heard your company is doing remarkable work. I was hoping we might talk about whether you need HR support. The irony wasn't lost on me. The man who had delivered my termination was now asking me for employment. But unlike Karen, I understood the value of second chances. Let's meet next week, I suggested. I think you would be a great addition to our team. With James handling our human resources, the company continued to grow. His experience helped us implement proper structures and policies as we scaled, ensuring we never recreated the toxic environment we had escaped. 2 years after starting with Taylor, our team had expanded to 22 people. We moved again this time to a full floor in a renovated industrial building. The Wellness Network had become Wellness Sphere, a comprehensive digital platform connecting over 200,000 users with wellness providers' content and products. I was no longer just marketing director, but chief marketing officer and partner in the business. Taylor and I had transformed his small startup into a respected player in the digital wellness space. We were invited to speak at conferences, profiled in business publications, and courted by investors. 3 years after the Aspen incident, we achieved something I had secretly dreamed about. We competed against Lambert Marketing for a major wellness brand account and won. The client specifically cited our innovative approach and authentic understanding of the wellness space as deciding factors. I didn't gloat about the victory publicly, but privately it felt like vindication. I had rebuilt not just a career, but something better than what I had lost. I had created a company culture based on respect, recognition, and collaboration, the antithesis of Karen's kingdom of fear and theft. Around that time, industry rumors began circulating about Lambert Marketing facing difficulties. Several major clients had departed. Their stock price was declining, and there were whispers of internal turmoil. I paid attention, but refused to take pleasure in anyone's downfall, even Karen's. I was too busy building something positive to dwell on the past. Until one day, when the past unexpectedly appeared in my inbox in the form of a job application. 5 years after founding Wellness Sphere with Taylor, we had grown into one of the most respected boutique marketing agencies in New York, specializing in wellness and lifestyle brands. With 60 employees across 3 offices, we were no longer the scrappy startup working out of a warehouse corner, but a legitimate competitor in the industry. My own life had transformed as well. I had purchased a comfortable condo in Brooklyn, earned recognition as one of Marketing Week's 40 Under 40, and built a reputation as both a creative strategist and compassionate leader. The trauma of Aspen had faded into a distant memory, though I still occasionally had nightmares about that cold, desperate night on the mountain. It was early spring when we announced our annual Graduate Associate Program, a competitive initiative offering 5 recent marketing graduates full-time positions with mentorship from senior team members. The program had become prestigious in marketing schools across the Northeast, typically attracting hundreds of applicants. As CMO, I usually only reviewed the final candidates after our HR team and department heads narrowed down the pool. This particular Tuesday morning, I settled at my desk with coffee and the stack of 20 finalist applications. I was halfway through the pile when a name caught my eye: Alexis Hamilton. I stared at the resume, my coffee forgotten. Hamilton was a common enough surname, but something made me suspicious. I examined the education section more carefully. Barnard College, graduating this May with a degree in marketing and psychology. Age would be right. Could it be? With trembling fingers, I opened my laptop and searched for Alexis Hamilton Barnard on social media. It took only moments to confirm my suspicion. There she was, a striking young woman, with familiar, sharp blue eyes and blonde hair, though worn in loose waves rather than a severe bob. Several photos showed her with an older woman I instantly recognized as Karen. Alexis Hamilton was Karen's daughter. I leaned back in my chair, heart pounding. Of all the marketing agencies in New York, why would Karen's daughter apply to mine? Did she know about our history? Was this some elaborate setup for revenge? I read through her application materials again, this time with heightened scrutiny. Her qualifications were genuinely impressive: 3.9 gigapascals, relevant internships, thoughtful responses to our application questions, excellent recommendation letters. On paper, she was exactly the kind of candidate we looked for. I called Angela into my office, closing the door behind her. "You are not going to believe this," I said, pushing the application across my desk. Angela scanned it quickly, her expression shifting from curiosity to shock. "Is this Karen's daughter?" "It appears so," I confirmed. I verified through social media. "This has to be a trick," Angela declared, pacing the office. "Karen must have put her up to this. Maybe they are trying to steal client information or sabotage us from within." Maybe I said, though, something did not feel right about that theory. But why send her daughter? It is too obvious. Karen is manipulative, but she is not stupid. "What are you going to do?" "Reject the application." I considered this. The easiest path would be to discard her application with some generic rejection email. No one would question it. We turned away dozens of qualified candidates each year, simply due to limited spots. "No," I decided finally. "I am going to interview her." Angela stared at me like I had lost my mind. "You cannot be serious. If this is some plot by Karen, I want to know what it is. And if it is not, well, we have always said we judge candidates on their own merits, not their connections. It would be hypocritical to change that now. India, this is not just any connection. This is the daughter of the woman who left you to die on a mountain and then destroyed your reputation. You owe her nothing." I know, I acknowledged, but I owe myself the satisfaction of looking her in the eye and making this decision properly. Besides, I am curious. What kind of person did Karen raise? Against Angela's continued objections, I added Alexis Hamilton to the interview schedule. I decided not to tell James, knowing his protective instincts would likely align with Angela's concerns. For the next week, I found myself distracted, imagining different scenarios for the upcoming interview. Would Alexis be a mini Karen, cold and calculating? Would she acknowledge our history or pretend ignorance? Had she applied specifically because of me? Or was it pure coincidence? The day of the interview arrived. I arranged to conduct it personally rather than with our usual panel. As I waited in the conference room reviewing her portfolio, one last time my administrative assistant showed her in. Miss Hamilton, this is India Wilson, our Chief Marketing Officer. Alexis Hamilton was tall and poised, dressed in a stylish but professional navy blue suit. She extended her hand confidently, but when our eyes met, I saw the precise moment of recognition. Her composed expression faltered, blue eyes widening in shock. Miss Wilson, she said, her voice slightly unsteady. Thank you for this opportunity to interview. Her reaction seemed genuine, not the polished performance of someone executing a predetermined plan. I gestured for her to take a seat across from me. Please call me India. I like to keep these interviews conversational. We began with standard questions about her education, internships, and career goals. Her answers were articulate and thoughtful, demonstrating both creativity and analytical thinking. Under different circumstances, I would have been thoroughly impressed. After covering the basics, I decided to address the elephant in the room. Alexis, I notice your mother is Karen Hamilton of Lambert Marketing. The industry is smaller than most people realize, and I actually worked at Lambert earlier in my career. Her cheeks flushed slightly. Yes, I am aware. I know you worked with my mother. More than that, I pressed gently. There was an incident at a corporate retreat in Aspen 13 years ago. I suspect you may have heard about it. Alexis set down her water glass carefully. Miss Wilson. India. I want to be completely transparent. I knew exactly who you were when I applied to Wellness Sphere. Your story is infamous in our household, though not in the way you might think. Go on. I encouraged, intrigued by her admission. My mother told me you were an incompetent, unstable employee who abandoned a company hike and then tried to blame others for your poor judgment. She began, then took a deep breath, but I stopped believing my mother's version of events years ago when I heard Michael Roberts tell the real story at a dinner party. He was drunk and racked with guilt. He described in detail how they left you injured on that mountain. I felt a jolt of vindication hearing that Michael had eventually spoken the truth, even if only while intoxicated. That must have been difficult to hear about your mother, I said carefully. Alexis nodded. It was the final confirmation of something I had suspected for years, that my mother is not the person she presents herself to be. I applied to Wellness Sphere because I admire what you have built here, not despite who you are, but because of it. You created something positive from a terrible experience. And your mother doesn't know you applied here? I asked, still suspicious. God, no. Alexis laughed humorlessly. She would be furious. We barely speak anymore. After my parents' divorce 3 years ago, I saw even more clearly how manipulative she could be. She turned the same tactics she used in the office against my father during their separation. Over the next hour, Alexis shared more about her complicated relationship with Karen. How growing up she had idolized her successful mother, only to gradually recognize the trail of damaged relationships and discarded employees Karen left in her wake. How she had chosen marketing not to follow in her mother's footsteps, but to prove there was a better way to succeed in the industry. By the end of our conversation, I was faced with a difficult decision. Alexis was genuinely one of the strongest candidates we had interviewed, with a perspective shaped by witnessing firsthand the toxic leadership she wanted to avoid replicating. Yet hiring Karen Hamilton's daughter carried emotional complications I couldn't ignore. Alexis, I appreciate your honesty today. We will be making our final decisions by the end of the week. After she left, I called an impromptu meeting with Angela, James, and Taylor. I shared the full story, including the revelations about Michael's confession and Alexis's estrangement from Karen. I still don't trust it, Angela insisted. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. James was more measured. From an HR perspective, if she's qualified and there's no concrete reason to reject her, denying her based solely on her parentage could be problematic. Taylor, who had never experienced Karen's cruelty firsthand, offered the most objective take. If she's the best candidate and she's genuinely trying to forge her own path, isn't giving her that chance exactly what our company stands for? Second chances judging people on their own merits. After much debate, we decided to include Alexis among our 5 graduate associates. I would personally mentor her, keeping a close eye for any concerning behavior while providing her the opportunity to define herself beyond her mother's shadow. When I called to offer her the position, Alexis was momentarily speechless. "Thank you," she finally managed. "I promise you won't regret this decision." I'm choosing to believe that I told her honestly. Just understand that trust is earned here, not assumed. You'll be starting with a clean slate, but it's up to you what you write on it. As I hung up the phone, I wondered if I had made a wise decision or a terrible mistake. Only time would tell whether Alexis Hamilton would prove to be nothing like her mother or whether Karen's influence ran deeper than either of us realized. What I never anticipated was how hiring Alexis would eventually bring me face to face with Karen again, 13 years after she left me stranded on that mountain. Alexis's first day at Wellness Sphere arrived with late summer sunshine streaming through our office windows. I had informed the relevant team leaders about her identity to prevent any awkward revelations, though we all agreed to judge her solely on her performance. I watched through my office window as James gave her the standard new employee tour. She carried herself with confidence but not arrogance, smiling and engaging with each introduction. When they reached the marketing department, Angela maintained professional courtesy despite her lingering reservations. At 11 o'clock, Alexis was scheduled for her welcome meeting with me. My assistant showed her into my office where I had arranged coffee and pastries to create a relaxed atmosphere. "Good morning, Alexis. How has your first day been so far?" I asked, gesturing for her to take a seat. "Wonderful, thank you. Everyone has been so welcoming," she replied, then froze as she focused on my desk nameplate for the first time. Though she had known who I was during the interview, seeing India Wilson, Chief Marketing Officer, emblazoned on my desk seemed to make her connection to her mother's past suddenly uncomfortably real. Her face paled slightly. "I'm sorry, it just hit me again. The situation. I understand if people here are wary of me." "Transparency is one of our core values," I said, deciding to address the issue directly. "The relevant team members know who you are, but they've also been told to form their own impressions based on your work and conduct." Alexis nodded, visibly relieved. "That's all I ask, for a chance to prove myself." "That said, I think we should discuss the elephant in the room," I continued. "Your mother caused significant harm not just to me but to many people's careers. Some of them now work here. While you're not responsible for her actions, understanding that context is important." "I know," Alexis said quietly, "and I want you to know that I'm deeply ashamed of what she did to you. I've struggled for years with the knowledge that I'm related to someone capable of such cruelty." "You mentioned at your interview that Michael Roberts revealed the truth. How did that come about?" Alexis shifted uncomfortably. "It was at my parents' anniversary party about 5 years ago. Michael had been drinking heavily. I overheard him talking to his wife in a corner, saying he couldn't celebrate with that woman anymore. Not after what she did to that poor girl in Aspen. I confronted him later that night, and the whole story came pouring out." She continued, her voice growing steadier. "He described leaving you injured on the mountain, how my mother had planned it all along. He said it had haunted him for years. 3 months later, he left Lambert Marketing. My father filed for divorce the following year, though I don't know if the two events were related. The revelation that Michael had carried that guilt for so long was surprising. I had always lumped him together with Karen and Rebecca as equally culpable. What happened to Karen after that? Professionally, I mean. I heard Lambert Marketing faced difficulties. They never fully recovered from losing the NutriFit account, and several others that followed," Alexis explained. "My mother was eventually demoted, though they called it a strategic restructuring. Last I heard, she's still there but with much less power. Robert Lambert brought in new leadership from outside." We spent the remainder of our meeting discussing Alexis's role and my expectations. Despite the unusual circumstances, I found myself impressed by her insight and determination to chart her own course. Over the next several months, Alexis proved to be an exceptional addition to our team. She worked tirelessly, contributed thoughtful ideas, and built positive relationships with colleagues who had initially been suspicious. Even Angela grudgingly admitted that Alexis showed none of her mother's toxic traits. During our regular mentoring sessions, I learned more about the complicated dynamics of the Hamilton household. Karen had been just as demanding and critical as a mother as she had been as a boss. Alexis had spent her childhood striving for approval that never came, her accomplishments always deemed insufficient. In a strange way, I should thank you, Alexis told me during one of our coffee meetings. Seeing how successful you've become, despite what my mother did to you, gave me courage to break free from her influence. If you could rebuild from nothing, I could certainly walk away from her poisonous expectations with my education and privileges intact. As the months passed, our professional relationship evolved into a genuine mentorship. I saw in Alexis not just talent, but a determination to succeed ethically, perhaps in direct response to her mother's example. By the end of her first year, she had been promoted from graduate associate to junior marketing strategist based on her outstanding performance. It was around this time that I received an invitation to speak at the Women in Marketing Leadership Summit, a prestigious industry event held annually at the Marquis Hotel in Manhattan. As one of the few female CMOs of a growing agency, I was asked to participate in a panel discussion on building ethical company cultures. The day of the summit arrived, and I felt a familiar surge of gratitude as I prepared my talking points. From being abandoned on a mountain to speaking as an industry leader, the journey had been difficult but ultimately rewarding. I arrived early to network before my panel. The ballroom was already filling with marketing professionals from across the industry. I was chatting with a digital strategist from Chicago when I felt a tap on my shoulder. "India Wilson, I heard you might be here." I turned to find myself face to face with Karen Hamilton for the first time in 13 years. She had aged, though she fought it with expensive procedures and impeccable styling. Her blonde hair was now highlighted with strategic silver, her power suit replaced by more fashionable but still formal attire. What hadn't changed were her eyes, still cold, still calculating. "Karen," I acknowledged, keeping my voice steady despite the sudden hammering of my heart. "This is unexpected." "I thought it was time we spoke," she said smoothly. "Water under the bridge and all that." The digital strategist tactfully excused herself, leaving us alone in our tense bubble amidst the crowded room. "Is that what you call leaving an injured employee on a mountain water under the bridge?" I asked, keeping my tone even. Karen's perfect smile tightened. "Ancient history. We've both moved on to different phases of our careers." "Some might call it different phases of karma," I replied. "How is Lambert marketing these days?" A flash of anger crossed her face before she composed herself. "Evolving with the industry. I notice you've been doing well for yourself. Quite the impressive turnaround." "Thank you. Building a company on respect and recognition rather than fear and theft turns out to be a sustainable model." Karen's eyes narrowed at the pointed comment. Before she could respond, a voice called out behind me. "Mom, what are you doing here?" Alexis approached, her expression a mix of shock and wariness as she looked between Karen and me. Karen's facade of pleasantness evaporated instantly. "I might ask you the same question. Networking with your colleagues." Her gaze shifted to the Wellness Sphere logo on Alexis's name badge, and her face contorted with disbelief. "You work for her. After everything I told you." "After everything Michael told me," Alexis corrected quietly. "I know what really happened in Aspen, Mom." The color drained from Karen's face. Michael was always weak, always exaggerating for dramatic effect. 3 separate accounts, from 3 separate sources, all described how you left India injured on a mountain and then sabotaged her career, Alexis stated firmly. "I chose to work for a company that values integrity over intimidation." Karen's shock at seeing her daughter at my company was everything I could have imagined and more. The carefully constructed narrative she had maintained for years was crumbling before her eyes. "You have no idea what you're talking about," Karen hissed. "This woman has clearly manipulated you, turned you against your own mother. India hired me despite who my mother is." "Not because of it," Alexis replied. "She judged me on my own merits when she had every reason to reject my application outright. That tells me everything I need to know about both of you." Karen turned to me, her composure completely shattered. "Is this your revenge, turning my own daughter against me?" It was the perfect opportunity to gloat, to twist the knife. 13 years ago, I would have leapt at the chance, but standing there successful and secure in who I had become, I felt no desire to inflict pain, even on someone who had caused me so much suffering. "Karen, I didn't hire Alexis to hurt you. I hired her because she's exceptionally talented and demonstrated the kind of ethical leadership we value. The fact that she's your daughter was a complication, not a motivation." I paused, then added, "What happened in Aspen was cruel and could have ended tragically. But it also forced me to build something better than I would have had at Lambert Marketing. In a strange way, I should thank you." Karen stared at me speechless for perhaps the first time in her professional life. "Mom, I have to go," Alexis said firmly. "India is speaking on a panel soon, and I want to get a good seat. We can talk another time if you want, but not here, not now." As Alexis walked away, Karen turned back to me, her carefully constructed world visibly unraveling around her. "You have no idea what I've gone through," she said, her voice uncharacteristically vulnerable. "The divorce, the demotion, watching everything I built start to crumble." I could have pointed out that she was simply facing the consequences of her own actions, but instead, I opted for the one response she would never expect: compassion. "I'm sorry things have been difficult, Karen. Truly. But it's never too late to rebuild, to create something better than what you lost. I'm living proof of that." With that, I excused myself to prepare for my panel, leaving Karen standing alone with her thoughts. My panel discussion went exceptionally well. Speaking about building ethical company cultures felt especially poignant after my encounter with Karen. As I described how Wellness Sphere's values of transparency, recognition, and collaboration had driven our growth, I could see Alexis in the audience nodding in agreement. That evening, back in my Brooklyn condo, I reflected on the day's events. The confrontation with Karen had provided a closure I hadn't realized I still needed. Seeing the shock on her face when she discovered her daughter worked for me was satisfying, but not in the vindictive way I might once have anticipated. Instead, it felt like the final chapter of a story that had shaped my life in unexpected ways. The traumatic experience in Aspen had nearly destroyed me, but it also forced me to build something entirely my own. Without that breaking point, I might still be working at Lambert Marketing, fighting for recognition in Karen's shadow. Instead, I had created a company that reflected my values, surrounded myself with people I respected, and mentored the next generation of marketing professionals, including Karen's own daughter. The true revenge wasn't hiring Alexis or confronting Karen. It was breaking the cycle of toxicity. It was building success through collaboration rather than competition, through lifting others up rather than pushing them down. As I poured a glass of wine and looked out at the Brooklyn skyline, I felt a sense of peace that had been 13 years in the making. The mountain had not defeated me. Karen had not defeated me. Instead, they had forged me into someone stronger, wiser, and ultimately happier. Have you ever experienced a betrayal that ultimately led to something better in your life? Sometimes our worst moments become the foundation for our greatest achievements. I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if you found value in my journey from abandoned on a mountain to CEO, please like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who might need to hear that setbacks can become setups for a comeback. Thank you for listening. And remember, success isn't about climbing over others to reach the top. It's about bringing others along with you on the journey upward.